In 2023, Mike Klubnica released Buckshot Roulette, which would go on to be published on Steam in 2024 and ultimately do extremely well. I've been wanting to talk about some more popular indie games rather than just reviewing ones that few have ever heard of. While that is still important to me, I also want to take a look at what makes some games so successful. So to start us off with reason number 1, atmosphere. This one is pretty obvious, and it is what makes the game what it is. The graphics are unique and expertly establish a world of rust and grime. 2D pixel art indie games are a dime a dozen these days, and, well, considering I have one on Steam, guilty as charged. There's nothing wrong with those, obviously, but 3D pixel art games are much less common outside of the boomer shooter genre. Nonetheless, Buckshot Roulette offers these higher fidelity but still grainy textures that make up its world. It's reminiscent of later DOS-era games, but also builds its atmosphere. Overall, it is different than what you'd normally see and catches your eye when mindlessly scrolling Steam's store page. The palette of greens and browns, where everything seems somewhat discolored and faded, just makes every surface in the game seem absolutely filthy. It immediately tells you that you're just not in a place that you would want to be in. A criminal underground full of drugs and filth. This tells you the game you're about to play will not be safe, because nothing here looks safe. The rooms look dark and dingy. Even the dealer mostly cowers away in the shadows. Most of the props in the background look like 70s and 80s computers and other various technology, which I think a lot of people find inherently creepier than modern technology. Whether the game is meant to take place in this period or the technology used by the in-game characters is simply outdated, I'm unsure, but something about the monochrome green display used to keep the game's score seems so inherently untrustworthy. You know the game you're about to play is far from official. The random wires dangling about, the missing tiles on the floor, and the graffiti on the wall in the bathroom, it gives you an instant sense of the world as soon as you begin the game. You walk across a balcony over a raving nightclub. It shows you that you're just in a random back room of a dingy club, no one around to save you from whatever may go down in there. Some of the items only reinforce this narrative. Knives on the table, cheap beer laying around, and cigarettes that literally heal you. Certain actions like breaking the magnifying glass, flipping it around, and stabbing it into the table, it looks cool or badass, which is also associated with being dangerous or a bad influence. The dealer is a monster, a thing of nightmares, but it is the one in control. This is its game. It's unknown if its head and hands float about or if it has a larger body that you'll never see. You'll have to imagine what horrors lie beyond the light. Reason 2. It's a culturally relevant twist. Buckshot Roulette is an interesting twist on a game known as Russian roulette. In that game, a group typically puts a single bullet into a 6-shot revolver and spins the cylinder, taking turns pointing the guns at themselves and pulling the trigger. It is the ultimate game of chance, and you're probably thinking, yeah, I know this, which is my point entirely. The game is an extremely well-known cultural phenomenon, something similar even making its way into the recent James Gunn Superman, an example showing that many of us have seen a depiction of Russian roulette in the last week, when this video releases anyway. It has been depicted in countless media and is referenced often simply just as a phrase for taking a big risk. Mental health and suicide being an important and often discussed topic online also plays into the fact that Buckshot Roulette is culturally relevant. However, cultural relevancy will only get you so far. It probably won't get you anywhere past mild interest, which is why the game takes this idea and puts a unique twist on it. Rather than using a 6-shot revolver, it uses a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, and rather than leaving shots in the cylinder empty, the shotgun is filled with blanks. It's certainly different, but the core idea of the game remains true. And now you're able to see the number of live shells and the number of blank shells. It isn't just a game of luck. Now there's more to it than that. A fun and unique twist on a well-known game. Now that is something worth making, something worth buying and playing. Reason number 3, simplicity. Although the game is a unique twist on an incredibly simple game, it never runs quite too far away. It remains fairly simple. It introduces these items that allow you to actually strategize, but you'll understand the full inner workings of the basic game mode within your first time playing it. Mousing over things gives you the basic ground rules of the game. The shotgun tells you that shooting yourself with a blank skips the dealer's turn, which is the integral part of the game, obviously, since without this mechanic there is never a reason to aim the gun at yourself. With it though, you're often forced to deliberate between shooting your opponent and shooting yourself. There are only 5 items in the basic game mode, and their effects are very straightforward. The magnifying glass allows you to see what's in the chamber, the cigarettes heal 1 damage, the beer allows you to eject the current shell in the chamber, and the hacksaw allows you to deal double damage, while the handcuffs simply skip the dealer's turn. Again, all very simple rules that are easy to understand, remember, and implement into your strategy. The game is still able to create tense, interesting, and fun gameplay inside of its own simplicity. But if the player does want more complexity from the game, they can play Double or Nothing, which has a few more items and makes the strategy a bit more complex. Nonetheless, the game may not stick in your mind as long as the in-depth story of a full open-world RPG, but you'll never be overwhelmed with a number of options either, which I think helps the player feel more engrossed as they play the game itself. Buckshot Roulette has skill, but it still keeps some of the luck that makes up the entirety of Russian Roulette. Reason number 4, Memorization and Attentiveness. The skill in this game is not dexterity on your controller to perform platforming mechanics or aim to perform perfect headshots, but rather the simple mental ability to remember. You're told how many shells are live and how many are blank at the beginning of each round. It shows you graphically and in text, but only for a second, so you better be paying attention. As the round progresses, you have to remember what has been fired so that you can recall what remains in the shotgun, and when the round will end. Of course, there is still luck involved. Knowing what shells remain doesn't mean you know what order they're in the gun. But if you know there are 3 live shells and 2 blanks, you'll probably wager that the next shot is a live one, since it is statistically more probable. That doesn't mean it will certainly be a live one, it could still be a blank obviously, so your wager is still exactly that, a gamble. Nonetheless, counting the shells and paying attention will certainly increase your chances of survival. This means that there is undeniably skill in the game, mainly attentiveness. Even more so in Double or Nothing mode, with the phone item that tells you a shell later in the sequence, which you will have to correctly remember to make any use of this item. If you lose focus, you're likely to forget what shells were initially loaded into the gun, and you'll probably miss what's been fired. That feeling when you suddenly come to and realize that you haven't been paying enough attention is almost gut-wrenching. You have no idea what is going on, and you're not sure what to do on your turn. At this point, the game practically is Russian Roulette again, just luck. So since you're essentially punished for not paying attention to how the game unfolds, that means the design encourages you to be attentive. Being encouraged to pay attention to the game makes you feel more engrossed in the action, in the suspense and the tension. It makes you think, and it makes you notice more things, maybe even more aspects of the game that you like. I'd go as far as to say that it makes you like the game more by making you more aware of it. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but that's kind of how it felt to me. Reason number 5, suspense. As I just mentioned, you can truly feel engrossed in the suspense and tension in this game. Suspense is something that Buckshot Roulette has mastered. The atmosphere plays a big role here again, but so do some other aspects. Before even beginning the game, the dealer makes you sign a liability waiver, which tells you the game you're about to play is certainly unsafe. Later in the game, as you're pulling items out of a box, you can momentarily pull out an old waiver that has been signed by God himself. It's covered in blood and it only shows it to you for just a second, but it's enough to make you think about the other people that have played this game and failed to best the dealer, including God or someone cocky enough to call themselves by the name. These little things add a lot to the tension. When you or the dealer aim the shotgun, the slight delay before firing is all the suspense one can handle. You think about whether or not you've made the right decision. You hear the shotgun just click, a dud, or a loud bang and the screen goes black. Suddenly you wake up with defibrillators in your face and you know that you're near death. You better not screw up again. As more health is knocked off, the tension builds until the final round where the dealer tells you that there will be no more defibrillators or blood transfusions. Now you know that it is life or death. From these things, the game is a genuine thrill to play for me. A perfect combination of luck and skill where you're not just guessing randomly, but you're also not quite exactly sure what will happen next. Buckshot Roulette definitely kept me on the edge of my seat on my first couple times playing it. Reason number 6, humanization. In many games, you play against different kinds of enemies, often ones much different from your own player character. A lot of the time, an enemy is much more powerful than you, but you're able to defeat them because of brains, not bronze. They have a pattern that you can learn to avoid their attacks, or a weakness to exploit. This isn't often the case for an enemy attacking you. They use brute force to defeat you. However, in Buckshot Roulette, the enemy, the dealer, is on the same playing field as you. The dealer plays by the same rules as you and uses the same items as you. But most importantly, it makes mistakes, much like yourself. It does not play perfectly. It'll take the same chances as you and can suffer the same consequences, but it can also make blatant mistakes. For example, towards the end of the round, if you're counting, you should know the last shell in the gun, and so should it. Even if you know the last shell is live, the dealer may still choose to aim the gun at itself, which is, of course, a completely avoidable error, not just bad luck. This makes it seem human, even though it certainly doesn't look to be. Despite the imperfect play, you know that others have lost this game before, so maybe their defeat was of their own doing? Nonetheless, the humanization of the dealer perhaps puts it in the uncanny valley zone, since it clearly isn't human, which only adds to the horror factor. Your player character is also human. You're not... You need defibrillators and blood transfusions to stay alive. Even the tiniest little details help with this. When you look at something other than the table, like to steal an item from the dealer or when it shows the health score, rather than cutting to it, the camera actually pans over to it as if you were leaning over to look at it. Cutting to it, like minigames would, makes it feel more like a movie you're watching, while panning the camera over feels like you're immersed in the world. All of this combines to create the immersion that makes you feel the atmosphere, the suspense, and the tension. Reason number 7. Length. This one is pretty straightforward, but the length of the game is refreshing. It realistically only takes 20 to 30 minutes to beat the game, and the game is only a few bucks. The initial experience itself is worth the full price, which isn't something I say about very many games. AAA seems to be focused on huge, open-world games with 30 to 60 hours of completion time, other than the yearly regurgitated sports games, that is, and they're sold to you for the new low price of only $80. Other than the price, there's nothing wrong with these open-world games. The good ones have fun mechanics and tell an interesting story. Even indie games right now seem very focused on roguelikes, deck builders, and roguelike deck builders that are meant to have infinite replayability. Which, again, there's nothing wrong with that. Our upcoming game, The Defector, is a roguelike even. However, Buckshot Roulette isn't that. It's just a quick experience, and to me, that is refreshing. If you want more, you can play the double or nothing mode, but with the recent addition of multiplayer, you're now getting a ton out of your $3. These two aspects combined make it a perfect game to do extremely well. For $3, pretty much anyone can buy it on a whim, and they're getting that value back immediately when they play the game because it is worth that price. And because the game is short, as well as being cheap, it helps quell a problem that many Steam users have: chronically buying games that they'll never play. To me at least, a game being a one-sitting experience means I can try it out at any time, even if I'm already in the middle of a large game. Almost 70% of Buckshot Roulette players on Steam have beaten the game, which is staggeringly high compared to other games, which means the majority of people that have played it have similar knowledge of the game, which is great for building a community and fueling the fervor around a newly released game. For comparison with some AAA titles, only 30% of Steam players beat Horizon Zero Dawn, 46%, less than half, for God of War on Steam, and for Red Dead Redemption 2, 23%. Only 20% also beat the epilogue. Anyways, that's why I think Buckshot Roulette was so successful. I hope to continue this series with other indie games, and as always, thanks for watching.